channel.
And we're back at it again, folks, here for the May event here at the No Pressure channel. What is the May event? Well, it's real simple. Well, actually, we'll just explain it in these 3 rules, which is 1, you guys got to vote and decide who gets to face off against who in this particular event. But we had some issues, but don't worry, we worked things out. Now we have some really good matches for you guys. The other thing is that whatever I say at the end of this episode, is not 100% proof. It's not guaranteed. You guys don't have to agree with it. You guys can feel free to disagree and leave it down in the comment section below, but just be respectful. And the last and final thing, we have to determine one winner in this fight. There can't be a tie or a one who won, or it can't be 2 winners or 2 losers. It has to be 1 winner. Anyways, moving on. In this particular match, we're going to do an interesting one. This one's called the power match. Now, if you remember, last year we did have a power match. It was a pretty good one, so if you guys want to watch that, go check out the May E23 playlist. But that being said, let's move on from there, because it was Ghost Rider versus Spawn. Yes, now this one's going to be a good one. You already saw in the caption below 2 very powerhouse females in this one, and I'm really excited. So let's get the stats going.
In this corner, representing the Marvel universe and also representing the X-Men herself, Rogue. She can absorb any power and has yet to have any power she couldn't absorb and use. Sometimes after absorbing a power, she can reuse it a month later for a moment. She can absorb Legion's multiple minds to search for something. She was able to absorb someone in astral form. She touches your powers. She also absorbs your knowledge of harnessing it. She fought the Avengers. She absorbed the powers of multiple inmates so she can use their powers against them to stop them from achieving a prison break. Absorb the power of Shadowcat, Nightcrawler, and Colossus at once. She can absorb hundreds of heroes. The example of that was when she absorbed, get this, Hulk, Spider-Man, Scarlet Witch, Captain America, Namor, Iron Fist, Wonder Man, Luke Cage, Hyperion, Storm, Iceman, Beast, and the list goes on and on. And on this corner, representing DC Comics and also representing the Teen Titans, Raven herself. Her soul self she uses as an energy projection in the form of a raven to fight on her behalf. She can blast away armies, have demon sorcerers, she can planet bust, defeat a version of her future self, she can defeat Trigon. In a crossover, she was considered even in equal power as the Phoenix Dark. She blasted back Swamp Thing. She held her own against the Spectre. She was tortured for 2 weeks straight at one point in the comics. Being able to see into the future, Unkindness Raven can reap havoc on the future and consume timelines. Within the 7 deadly sins, she was able to defeat Superman Prime 1,000,000, who had a Green Lantern ring with him. This was when he was godlike in this form, and he had her minions overpower him, take him out for good, and then moved on to their next victim. She was able to enter realms outside of time like the Space Force and New Genesis.
Alright, so let's start off with Rogue, shall we? Now, the pros on Rogue's side. So this is pretty much the pros on each side. Starting off with Rogue, which is how she could probably beat Raven. For starters, grabbing onto her is probably her bread and butter. Absorbing her powers is going to be the way to go. She could either do a few things. One, she can drain her completely and then put her out cold in that way, or she can absorb a certain amount of that power and then eventually use that power to her advantage. And I do believe that's going to come in handy. Now, in the comics, Raven has a lot of conflict issues with her father inside of her that she has to kind of maintain them. But Rogue absorbing her powers, I don't think she's going to have that same issue. I don't think Trigon might be able to control her. I think it's kind of more like this is daughter and father separation, blood related issues that she can only be able to contain them, and there's no way that Rogue would be involved in that if she starts absorbing Raven's powers. But if she has Raven's powers, that means she has no Trigon, which means that she might be able to use her power to her full might in this sort of way. Okay, and probably the last point, well, you see, like I already kind of made a few points from that all at once. Absorb her energy to the point where she could put her out cold, absorb it enough that she can actually use it against her, and without Trigon to have to hold her back, she could probably use that power better than Raven could. The last point I will make is that Rogue just needs to find either the X-Men tower or the Avengers tower, and then ask them if she can use for a moment their powers. If she can just touch a bunch of them, use all those powers, and then go against Raven. Now, all those powers, whether it's the X-Men or the Avengers or both combined, it's going to put a number on Raven. Raven is strong, but all those powers at once coming at you, I don't think so. Eventually it's going to overwhelm you, and eventually Rogue might be able to take her down for the count in this way. Alright, now on this side we're going to be arguing Raven's pros and how she would be able to defeat Rogue. So, for starters, Rogue's powers are a temporary power-up. Yes, it's a long temporary power-up depending on how long she holds on to, but if she doesn't hold on to for too long, temporary power-up, eventually Raven just needs to outlast her. Battery runs out, and now it's Raven against Rogue with only her strength and speed and flying abilities, which is great, but Raven being able to use now another thing is her force fields, her soul self to be able to protect her from Rogue. It can come in handy. She can use it as a force field. She can push the soul self against Rogue to push her away. Either way, as long as she doesn't touch Raven, Raven has the upper advantage in the fight. Because Rogue, yes, she's strong and fast, but there's not a lot to go on when you have someone with the mystic arts or the dark arts going against you who can teleport you somewhere or keep you trapped in a bubble or something like that. So yeah, you're kind of limited. And the last point I'll make is the soul self is a very important element to Raven's battle strategy, considering that no matter if Rogue touches her for a temporary period amount of time, or if she happens to, let's say she gets her powers and now she's fighting Raven for a long time, and then Raven feels exhausted and feels knocked out or gets KO'd in some moment, her soul self will fight on her behalf. She will continue to fight for her. So yeah, there's no way of actually really defeating Raven completely in a fight when it comes to her soul self and herself being involved in the fight. Even if she gets knocked out, she still has her to come in handy. Ultimately, who would win this fight? I'm going to give it to Raven. Now, why would I give it to Raven? Well, let's make the argument, shall we? Yes, Rogue can touch her. Powers goes up for a moment. And maybe she gets the upper advantage in the fight in the beginning. That is true. But again, the soul self is going to be able to create distance if she wants to, or create a force field, so Rogue wouldn't be able to touch her. It'd still be very tricky for her to be able to touch her. And even if she did and she absorbed Raven's powers, Raven doesn't just have one level. She can go another level. She has like White Raven or something like that, which means she can power up and level up. If Rogue were to use Raven's powers, there is a chance that Raven might be able to power up to her next level, which Rogue won't be able to do, considering yes, Rogue is able to absorb and learn the knowledge of their powers and be able to use it in certain ways, but sometimes it's not always a very exact science. Sometimes she can be out of calculation, considering she's not always using this power and she's just barely getting into it. So it's like she's still using it, but she's not really have the full complete handle over it, which Raven does, which means she could level up. She can use her soul self to protect her from being touched and win this fight no matter what. She just has a lot more going for her. So yeah, I give it to Raven. But as always, No Purse fam, we really appreciate you guys keeping it 400 subs. Peace.